Following a diversionary look at where I am currently on this journey, we are back looking at the breaking of the sixth seal as interpreted by Jason Brashears of Archaix. Now, if there is one thing I would like to understand before proceeding, it would be why Jason trusts the book of Revelation in the first place, and why he gives so much credence to the prophecies found in it, since he believes Christianity has been hijacked historically. As previously stated, I have only one recollection of him mentioning how he believes Revelation to be much older than thought, and that it should be interpreted in the light of ancient Greek culture. That's if I can trust my memory, which is dubious. I really need to find that statement again. Because we saw in a previous video how the canonization of the book of Revelation had major problems, and that it only just made it into the catalogue of Scripture. So it is with this in mind, and not knowing for sure Archaix's understanding of the provenance of this ancient text, that I proceed with a little caution. Because I cannot say at this stage with absolute certainty that I buy into this paradigm yet. Time will tell. However, much is happening in the world which seems to lend credibility to Archaix's interpretation of the seven seals. Now, as a brief reminder of what these are, according to the Archaix material, the first seal, the White Horseman, was broken in 2020 with the unleashing of the COVID virus. 4 years later, in 2024, this year as of this recording, we will see the second seal broken, the taking of peace from the earth. Now, something happened earlier this year which has great significance regarding this second seal. Apparently, the Olympiad calendar year begins in May, and this past May saw an event which could be seen as heralding the breaking of the second seal. At the end of the first seal, we read that a crown was given to the first horseman. May of this year saw a total eclipse. And of course, a total eclipse has a peculiar characteristic. The sun's corona is distinctly visible for a short period of time. Corona is also the Greek word for crown. Coincidence, maybe? We are perhaps beginning to see the effects of the breaking of the second seal all around us. Unless, of course, everything is just a huge fluke. Brashears is very precise regarding this event. He recounts how a large dagger was given to this horseman, which he maintains is indicative of small arms. Jason sees the taking of peace from the earth in terms of rioting, small uprisings, and local attacks rather than all-out global war. And it could very well be that he's right on that score. However, with other large concerns looming, such as the West's proxy war with Russia via the Ukraine, and the Gaza genocide debacle with Israel, maybe these events will also turn out to be rather significant. I guess it remains to be seen. We have an advantage, however, because this is apparently playing out before us right now. And we can verify the data because of that. We can know in a relatively short time if everything is transpiring as prophesied or interpreted. When you consider the huge migrations, illegal or otherwise, that have taken place all over Europe and in the US, it makes one wonder if this was the groundwork for the breaking of the second seal. We are already seeing the unrest caused largely by these migrant populations, many of whom are men of fighting age. There are even now reports of border crossings consisting of individuals believed to be linked to ISIS and other terrorist groups, of planned attacks on US cities like New York and Philadelphia. Which leads us to ask another question. Are there sleeper cells being set up in countries like the US, the UK, and other first world nations? A fifth column that will strike when the time is right? Will we see attacks and violence escalate, once more exposing the veracity of the seven seals of the apocalypse? The next seal we have looked at is hyperinflation. Now this is 4 years from now, But once more, we are already seeing indications that this might well take place. The petrodollar is collapsing. Many financial experts are predicting the US dollar will cease to be the world reserve currency. Saudi Arabia has announced it is no longer going to use the dollar to sell oil, now that the petrodollar deal of 50 years is expiring. This will likely bring on hyperinflation here in the US. Then there are the BRICS nations. Now this is a conglomeration designed to bring together the world's most important developing countries to challenge the political and economic power of the wealthier nations of North America and Europe, who have abused this advantage by continually punishing other nations, by imposing never-ending financial sanctions, thereby advancing the West's agenda. This weaponization of the reserve currency is backfiring, and the emergence of BRICS could be a run-up to the breaking of the third seal. Then there is the fourth seal. And I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on it was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. 25% of the earth's population is going to be affected by this seal. Some will experience death, possibly through disease or hunger, or some other obscure reason. But not all. Some will contract disease. Again, not all. Some will experience famine or hunger. Again, not all the 25%. 75% of the earth's population are unaffected. Then there are the beasts of the earth mentioned. Now Jason doesn't seem to know exactly what that means, and neither do I, if I'm honest. It's a little vague. All we can do is speculate, but it seems there will be animal attacks of some kind. Now I'm not going to go into great detail regarding these seals since we have already looked at them in an earlier video. Now this is just a brief reminder. The next seal, as we have seen, will not be obvious. It takes place in the afterlife. It has also been called the cry of the martyrs. And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God, and for the testimony for which they held. From 2036 onwards, the awakened after death will be quarantined, so that there will be no returning to the life sim, but will exit the prison and go on to the next level, whatever that might be. After, that is, they are brought back once more to fight in the Battle of Armageddon. Now see this however you want, and how the return to the final battle will take place. But there will be no more reincarnating to this reality for these souls after the final battle. They have made the grade. A white robe is given to them. They have a new avatar, which will be suitable for the upgrade. Now, I have made my views on reincarnation clear in the video I recently uploaded, My Modern Understanding of Gnosticism. From my vantage point, these quarantined souls have broken free from the prison of illusion and deception. The soul trap no longer affects them. A great awakening is taking place because of certain local and world events. It's almost as if the puppet masters are in such panic and disarray, they inadvertently step over certain demarcation lines, tipping their hand, revealing their agenda. Desperation will do that. And this is what it seems the seals are doing also, at least the first four seals. From the fifth onwards, it's too late. He that is unjust, let him be unjust still, and he which is filthy, let him be filthy still, and he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. There's no going back from here on. You had your opportunity during the first four seals. Now your fate is settled. COVID started the wake-up process in a remarkable way, and this is encouraging, especially for someone like me who is an inveterate pessimist. For a long time I have been a glass is half empty kind of guy. But this awakening, whatever form it might end up taking, is at last turning me into a glass might be half full old geezer. At least to the extent that there will be those who will break free and escape the prison. Now we are continuing to focus on the breaking of the sixth seal. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll, when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman and every freeman hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said unto the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? As we have already seen in a previous video, this is a description of a pole shift, which, if Archaix is correct, will be initiated by the return of the planet Pheonix. Jason Brashears is a chronologist who has done extensive research on ancient historical timelines and calendars, and he has documented numerous events which, he says, proves the existence of the Pheonix phenomenon. In this episode, we are going to take a closer look at other prophecies regarding this event, which seem to reinforce the prophecies of Revelation and how they describe the breaking of the sixth seal, according to Archaix, of course. There is an old axiom which has become extremely relevant to me these past few years, which is, truth is stranger than fiction. In the end, I believe it will be the truth that shall set us free. It's the key to our chains. And with this in mind, let's proceed to the breaking of the sixth seal. I'm the Grumpy Grandpa. Do the elites know something we don't? Are they privy to information hidden from the likes of you and me? Until now, that is. Why are the rich building underground bunkers? Now, we looked at this phenomenon in a previous video. The US government is also building DUMBs all over the US. DUMBs standing for Deep Underground Military Bases. There are obviously many reasons why they would build such structures. Nuclear war would be an obvious one. But another could very well be the preparation for a catastrophic event like a pole shift that they know is coming. But firstly, we need to ask, is the planet Pheonix real? Now, I personally think, having read much of Jason's material, that the hypothesis has been proved beyond all doubt, at least for me. He has shown there is a regular cycle of events that can be traced to this phenomenon. Now, for a detailed look at these recurrences, you will need to read his books, When the Sun Darkens, Nostradamus and the Planets of Apocalypse, and Anunnaki Homeworld. Further, as a background to this question, we need to look at the mythology surrounding the Pheonix and what it meant to the ancients, and how this is related to the Pheonix phenomenon itself, by way of analogy. The story of the Pheonix is an ancient mythological tale found in various cultures around the world, though it is mostly associated with ancient Egyptian, Greek, and Roman mythology. The Pheonix is typically depicted as a magnificent bird with brightly coloured plumage, often described as being red and gold. According to the myth, the Pheonix has the remarkable ability to regenerate or be reborn from its own ashes. The most well-known version of the story comes from Greek mythology. According to this tradition, the Pheonix lived for hundreds of years before eventually building a nest and setting itself on fire. From the ashes of the fire, a new Pheonix would emerge, symbolizing renewal, resurrection, and immortality. This cycle of death and rebirth is central to the myth of the Pheonix and has been interpreted in various ways throughout history. Some see it as an allegory for the cyclical nature of life, death, and renewal, while others view it as a representation of hope and transformation. In Egyptian mythology, the phoenix was associated with the sun god Ra. He was believed to be a symbol of resurrection and eternal life. The Egyptian phoenix, known as the Bennu bird, was often depicted as a heron or egret. In Roman mythology, the phoenix was associated with the fire goddess Venus, and was said to be a symbol of the eternal city of Rome, rising from the ashes, much like the city itself after various disasters. Overall, the story of the phoenix has captured the imagination of people around the world for centuries, serving as a powerful symbol of resilience, transformation, and the enduring cycle of life. So from this brief glimpse at the various myths, we can see how the name Phoenix is given to this mysterious planet that returns on a predictable orbit of 138 years. Assuming Jason is correct and the planet Phoenix is real, and for whatever reason the prophecies of Revelation are a genuine prediction of what is to take place in 2040, what of the other sources which gives the event the appearance of legitimacy? Jason tells us in his book Nostradamus and the Planets of Apocalypse that Nostradamus, who was a Catholic by necessity because the religion was imposed upon his Jewish parents, had access to chronological records that are lost to us today. He had received private instruction from Hebrew elders before he left the community for other academic training, and this Jewish instruction would have included details of the Pheonix Phenomenon, which the Jews were very much aware of. Jason explains that Nostradamus not only knew of the existence of the planet Phoenix, but also the exact year of its return. Now it's interesting to note that Archaix believes that the last time the Phoenix transited the sun was in 1902, when, beginning in the month of May, the Earth passed through an immense field of debris and was blanketed in dust and mud. Also in May of that year, the volcano Mount Pelée on the island of Martinique erupted, killing 30,000 people. Now, volcanic disruption, it appears, is a symptom of a phoenix visitation. He goes on to describe how the sixth seal is a very descriptive picture of a pole shift, where the outer lithosphere, or the crust, smoothly glides over the mantle and displaces entire continents, causing oceans to inundate coastal lands and initiate extreme seismic disturbances. Archaix further tells us that it is believed Nostradamus named the phoenix and associated it with the year 1903, just 1 year off, and that we also know the Nostradamus family coat of arms consisted of 2 solar symbols and the head of the phoenix itself, though I could not confirm that myself. We are also told, whether true or not, Nostradamus was a descendant of the tribe of Issachar, who were thought to be the keepers of time. Interesting. Jason also insists that 1902 begins the countdown to the end. He believes it marks the beginning of the end of days. Now, before proceeding, we need to look at an important discovery in the way the Nostradamus quatrains are interpreted. Jason reports that he discovered the prophecies of Nostradamus were dated, something previously unknown to most people. He read a book by one Mario Redding called Nostradamus, The Complete Prophecies for the Future, who demonstrated this date index in an easy-to-follow format. Nostradamus recorded his prophecies in a book called Centuries. Now, this doesn't describe an actual 100-year period, but a method of dividing his predictions into 100 quatrain sections. It appears that prior to the year 2000, the number of the century had no relevance to the chronology of the quatrains, neither does the number of the quatrain itself. But beginning with the 21st century, the quatrains take on a specific pattern and identifies the precise year of their fulfillment. For example, Century 1, Quatrain 16 would be referring to the year 2016. Century 5, Quatrain 23 would be signifying 2023. Now these are just made up examples for clarity, but you get the picture. So the century itself has no chronological significance. It's the number of the quatrain which refers to the year. Now, as already mentioned, this pattern of dating only refers to prophecies during the 21st century. Prior prophecies do not fall within this pattern, for some reason. If this is true, we need to eliminate prophecies already fulfilled prior to 2000, meaning those that remain would have this dating method applied to it. Now, it's a little convoluted, I know, but let's stick with it for now. So employing this date index method, Century 2, Quatrain 40 clearly refers to 2040. Now here's Mario Redding's translation of that quatrain. A short while after a previous occurrence, a further fierce storm will arise over land and sea. The seaborne cost of this one will be even larger. Fire, animals, it will be even greater. Outrage. This seems to describe a hugely destructive storm. Jason makes the link between this and the sixth seal. He then goes on to quote from a book by Archaix, The Final Prophecies of Nostradamus. Century 2, Quatrain 41. The great star will burn for 7 days, and the cloud will make the sun appear double. The large mastiff will howl all night when the great pontiff changes his abode. Following this quote, Jason relates how that in 2239 BC, people witnessed planet Pheonix for 7 days before the Great Flood, darkening the sun in the process. The reference to the cloud hints at cosmic dust, which is another indication of a Pheonix transition. It's the singular mention of cloud that gives this impression, whereas the plural word clouds would indicate mere atmospheric clouds. Now, as for the two suns, there is a mixture of interpretations. Some talk of two literal suns, while others speak of an appearance of two suns. Now, with the Pheonix transiting at a certain angle, it would be reflective of the sun itself, giving the impression that there are two suns involved. Now, the quatrains are full of astronomical symbols and metaphors. The great pontiff mentioned refers to the sun, whose course the pole shift alters as it crosses the sky, or changes its abode, as the quatrain describes it. Jason emphasizes that it's not the sun that's moving, but the Earth's lithosphere, or crust, altering our vantage point. The day will quickly turn into night, and at night there will be a sudden appearance of the sun. The east will be moved northwards, while the west will be pushed south, to quote him, that is. According to Archaix, Nostradamus did not restrict himself to just a couple of quatrains when describing the pole shift, but encoded the same event over 3 or more. And it's the subject matter there that links them together, not the date index system. He quotes Century 1, Quatrain 43. Before the coming of the end of the empire, a miraculous event will take place. A field moved, the pillar of porphyry put in place on the gnarled rock. Century 9, Quatrain 32. A deep column of fine porphyry is found. Inscriptions of the capital under the base, bones, twisted hair, the Roman strength tried. The fleet is stirred at the harbour of Mytilene. Century 10, Quatrain 93. The new bark will go on voyages. Far and near they will transfer the empire. Bouquet and Arles will retain the hostages.
near where 2 columns of porphyry were found.
Porphyry is a hard igneous rock, and Jason thinks these passages refer to some astonishing archaeological discovery. The reference to bones and twisted hair is self-explanatory. Now, I must confess that I got a little confused with these quatrains. As previously mentioned, the date index described earlier didn't correspond to the appropriate years. But then a few paragraphs later, Jason explains why he included them. Now he wrote, and I quote,
"We will not spend time trying to interpret these quatrains and those they seem to be connected with. These were provided in example to show that Nostradamus would use a quatrain to establish a date and then add other quatrains connected to it through subject matter rather than number designations."
I still don't get why he makes that distinction. He goes on to explain that Nostradamus did that so he could elaborate when needed, because some years would be full of events, while others not so much. He quotes 4 more quatrains. Century 2, quatrain 43.
"During the appearance of the bearded star, the 3 great princes will be made enemies. The tremulous peace on earth will be struck from the skies. The Po, the winding Tiber, a serpent on the shore."
Century 5, quatrain 59.
"The English chief stays too long at Memes towards Spain. Enobarbe to the rescue. Many will die through war started on that day when the bearded star falls in Artois."
Century 6, quatrain 6.
"He will appear towards the north, not far from the bearded star in Cancer. Susa, Sienne, Boeotia, Eretria, the great man of Rome will die, the night dispersed."
Then lastly, Century 2, quatrain 15.
"A short while before, a king is murdered. Castor and Pollux in the ship, a bearded star. Public treasure plundered on land and sea. Pisa, Asti, Terera, and Turin are forbidden territories."
The bearded star is what seems to link these quatrains together. Maybe this is what Jason was trying to explain. He says that the bearded star refers to a phrase borrowed from Aristotle's meteorology, referring to a celestial body with a tail that stretches in one direction. He also claims the root of the word for comet is hairy star. These 4 quatrains, it seems, are the only reference to bearded stars, therefore linking them to the same event. Although other comments are mentioned in the quatrains, they are not described in this particular way. Quatrain 6, Century 6, refers to the great man of Rome who will die. Now this is code for the Pope. The Pontiff of Rome, as seen in Century 2, quatrain 41, is a symbol for the sun, which changes its abode. This is confirmed in Century 6, quatrain 6, where it is said that after the death of the great man of Rome, the sun, the night dispersed. Now here is where it gets a little strange, if it hasn't already become strange. Archaix tells us that the 4 bearded star quatrains directly refers to the planet Pheonix, and uses the following math to prove it. Century 2, quatrain 43. Now by adding these together you get 45. Century 5, quatrain 59, you get 64. Century 6, quatrain 6, you get 12. And finally, Century 2, quatrain 15, 17. Now add these 4 numbers up and you get 138, the planet Pheonix orbit. Then multiply that by the 4 quatrains themselves and you get 552. And this represents the Pheonix cycle, another pattern of importance. Now you'll have to see his charts to understand that significance. I'm not going to go into that right now. And unless you read the books, much of this won't seem that consequential. But I assure you, having read the books myself, they have meaningful implications. Jason describes how the Phoenix return will have devastating effects on coastal cities like New York and London. The beaded star passages determine the identity of the Phoenix and are filled with subject matter that links them to other seemingly obscure quatrains that can only be descriptive of the 2040 disasters. Century 9, Quatrain 31.
The trembling of the earth at Matara, the tin island of St. George half sunk. Drowsy with peace, war will arise at Easter. In the temple, abysses opened.
According to Erica Cheetham, an Oxford scholar and author of a number of books on Nostradamus, Matara is 1,000 miles away from Britain, or the island of St. George as it's called. St. George is also the patron saint of England. There's the link. So it seems there is going to be a massive earthquake in the UK, and half of that fair isle will sink into the Atlantic Ocean. Jason speculates that it will be the southern half that this will happen to, submerging London in the process. So head for the hills, fellow Brits. The quatrains I have quoted here are only a small part of the picture Nostradamus paints. It's just not feasible to deal with everything Jason covers in the book. All I can do is recommend you read Jason's work for yourselves, if you're really interested in the subject. Now, his writing style is a little archaic, which I think is because he reads very old volumes, which uses this kind of language structure. But you'd soon get used to it. I recommend you read them. Now, you should not view the sixth seal as the end of the world. This is not the beginning of the apocalypse, but it does give us reason to be concerned, because there is more to come. In 2026, we will see the return of another primeval planet, known to ancient cultures all over the world. This is Nibiru, which will almost collide with the Earth and initiate far worse worldwide catastrophes. Now, using the same date index by Mario Redding, we have two quatrains which depict this horrific scenario. Century 2, Quatrain 46.
Following one great human tragedy, a greater lie in wait, the mighty movement of the centuries begins renewal. Rain, blood, milk, famine, sword and plague. Fire will be seen in the sky with a trail of sparks.
Then Century 1, Quatrain 46.
Very near Auk, Lector and Mirande, a great fire will fall from the sky for 3 nights. The cause will appear both stupefying and marvellous. Shortly afterwards there will be an earthquake.
In this instance, the date index is spot on. Now, I don't know about you, but I have some reservations about this. One of the things I find a little difficult to swallow is the elaborate explanation given for the departure from the date index method. It seems a little too convenient. On the other hand, when it works, it really works. Now, before we end this episode, I want to show you something interesting I recently stumbled across. The following is a couple of clips from a video by the Future Forecasting Group, who I've mentioned before. They are a group of remote viewers who are pretty good at what they do. I've previously shown you clips of their work. Now, in these snippets, they are remote viewing the year 2050. Now, this is 10 years off from our event. But don't forget, there is also 2046 to consider, with the return of Nibiru. And we have said before that these seals overlap with each other. Just take a look and see what you think.
That looked like an open eye, but it really had a glow to it. Yeah, some real doom and gloom kind of feel here. Open sea, shocking. Target seemed to involve an oceanic disturbance causing a massive water displacement. People unprepared, casualties, injuries. Not necessarily tidal waves, but enormous waves ripping the coastline. Um, and an element of objects being smashed, potential missile, comet-like object, land. This is the wave that I see coming hitting the coastline, and I got the sense that it was man-made. Imminent danger, rushing wall of water, and then here, like a fireball glowing red above the clouds, ripping sound like it's breaking the sound barrier. Massive detonation impact, water displacement, sending enormous waves in every direction, and then an eerie silence, calm before the storm. But this was like a wave or a wall of water coming toward you. This was not like looking out at the ocean and seeing ocean swell. And then observed from space, massive impact from the surface. Looking at the sky, darkness rushes in, blotting out the sun. Daylight suddenly dark as night. Ominous feeling of dread. Rare event. Few people are prepared for. Like a meek will inherit the earth type of reset. Man-made, long-lasting natural consequences.
Daz, you want to go next?
Yeah, can do. But this isn't realized yet. This feels very fluid and not yet formed. So it's almost like I was looking at something that wasn't, it was in the future. It wasn't an actually realized thing yet. But I felt like the whole thing would lead to conflict, flames, anger, destruction. But another route over time leads elsewhere. So there's like two routes for the future. One led to the bad stuff here, the fucked up one, and another route led to being okay. But the one that led to the things being okay was a bit farther away than the fucked up one. But it felt very unphysical to me as well. Not physical. So there's like all this was like words and stuff like that. So the target felt not very physical to me. But the thing was, it was just a huge opposing dynamic, energetic, emotional release. And I wrote here, the closest thing I can think of this is like the death of JFK or Diana kind of emotional global feeling or impact. And that's the closest from my personal experience to what I felt that these guys were picking up on. An older male, over 50, very experienced and decisive. But it was like an international influence that he had here, and he had a huge ego and a dark agenda here, and he wanted to be a part of history. And he had a loose plan, which is very strategic, like chess-like. And it involved a lot of spying here, and spying then was a big focus that I picked up on. So I felt that there was a multi-level global scheme that uses spying and comms and people to influence results. And it's all very political, very dark, devious. Lots of things like blackmail being used, safe houses, electrical comms, everything monitored, clearing houses, a vast network of layered people collecting information and manipulating people. And everything to do with this was all political. I looked at the aim for this. It was just domination, power, control, and ego. This is all because of a very dangerous man. He uses people. He has a long-term dark agenda. He has a warlike agenda with destruction. Anything goes. And he's secretly manipulating everything on many levels, using a complex team of people, intel trained, social trained, spies, and lots of covert activity. It's an information game. There's a plan, which is to do with movement over borders, a bit like a land grab. And it felt very high up, presidential, or like a top command structure here. Lots of spying, again, info gathering, manipulation, with AOLs here of Washington.
Thank you, Daz. Very interesting. And then Dick, you're up last.
I went full Edward Reardon right off the bat. This is full Edward Reardon. While everything around it is crumbling, the obelisk remains. So, woo.
Very ominous. Very ominous.
I got the idea of people witness a dramatic energy thing, but it's manufactured. It's like an AI or hologram. So, yeah, my theme of this is stuff is created out of nothing. Like you're witnessing things that don't really exist. Big light shows, like you see a lot of things, like Project Blue Beam, I guess. A lot of people see something big and dynamic that's manufactured. Dramatic cell phone videos, but it's designed and created.
As of now, I do not know if these prophecies are true, including those of the book of Revelation. Given its history and wide range of interpretation, I'm a little skeptical. However, as I've already intimated, things look like they could be lining up with what's being prophesied. Like I said earlier, we have the advantage of seeing in real time how this is playing out, and if events line up with the prophecies. I said earlier that the awakening which is taking place right now has transformed me into more of an optimist, a glass is half full kind of guy. However, be cautious how you understand that statement. I do not think we can save this world. Now I'm talking about the societal troubles, not the geological events we have been looking at. I'm talking in terms of the breakdown of society, reflecting this planet as a prison for souls. Just look at human history and what we have done as a species. The best we can do is save ourselves and perhaps influence others to do the same. This isn't a world that wants freedom. If nothing else, COVID showed us that. If most people in the US, in Europe, and the rest of the modern world wanted freedom, the authorities could not have got away with what they did with all the ludicrous, nonsensical, unscientific restrictions they imposed during the pandemic. Restrictions that were totally ineffective, and they knew it. The fact is, they did get away with it, and no one seems to be facing any real consequences for their totalitarian actions. And there are people today still hiding behind clinical masks, many of them young people, trembling, afraid of the bogeyman. Masks that were not designed to keep us safe from viruses and were therefore totally ineffective, showing how completely brainwashed and controlled these people are. This year there have been and are going to be elections taking place. Here in the US it will be in November. With all the mind control games the establishment plays on the people via their different methods, not least the legacy media, forget it if you think we can vote ourselves out of tyranny. We only have the illusion of democracy. This is a prison. I've said it before and I will say it again. This compliance by and of the people is what terrifies me more than anything else. Such are beyond saving. So I do not see it as my job to save a world which is fundamentally a prison. This reality is programmed as a penitentiary, and a large part of the population has developed a kind of a Stockholm syndrome. They have become enamored with their captors. Let him who is unjust be unjust still. They don't want to be saved. Well, to such people I say, go towards the light when you die, and you will be greeted by whomever your belief system requires, be it Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, beloved family members. And have fun when you reincarnate back to your cell in this reality, the cell you love so much. As for me, I just want as many of us as possible who have woken up to break free or die trying, as Archaix would frame it. Until the next time.